Well, thanks everybody for coming out on a bright Sunday afternoon. And I just want to say to our Arctic colleagues, the weather is always like this here. So having got the first bit of false news out of the way, welcome to everybody to this Arctic Fringe debate. It's coming just ahead of an Arctic forum that's happening in Edinburgh over the next 2 days, which is led by the Icelandic Arctic Circle organisation. You're saying that the microphone isn't working? Have
you got the mute off?
Oh, I got the mute off. See, that's the sort of thing, darlings, you don't expect to have to encounter yourself.
There you
are.
That's better.
And can I just point out that the only reason I knew there was a big problem is not for all the Scots who are sitting in the audience thinking, I can't hear her, but you know what, I know what she's going to say anyway, right? But to Bryndis from Iceland sitting at the back who's waving her hands going, I can't hear you. Which tells us something already perhaps about the propensity to intervene and the propensity to expect things to work that seems to come from the Nordic countries. But anyway, as I was saying, there's going to be an Arctic forum held over the next 2 days in Edinburgh. That's a big thing for us. Scotland has known itself in many ways, but as a part of the North Atlantic, we've always been that. And those of us who come from the north of Scotland are aware of that. But perhaps it's something that's got lost in all the politics that has followed, and let's not get into that one. But really, the door to the east, the door to the Nordics, and the door to the Arctic is hugely important to Scotland's future. And we'll hear something about that here. But the point of any Nordic Horizons event is not really so much to kind of wonder about how everything fits into our world, but simply to hear quite a lot about what is happening elsewhere. And welcome to President Grimson from Iceland, who is the Arctic Circle chairman. And Takeshi, I think? Yes. Hello. So, right, everybody having kind of got here, let me just explain that what will happen is we're going to have contributions from our 4 Arctic speakers here. We'll then have a question and answer session, as we always do. The whole thing is being live streamed by Democracy TV, which is Gavin at the front, accompanied by his glamorous assistant, Lily, here from Nordic Horizons, who is being our sound woman for the day, first time ever. We're also having photographs taken, I think, by John Davies. So if for any reason you don't want to be seen here on a Sunday afternoon, you'd need to tell us. And let me just get straight into introducing the folk who are going to speak here. Jon Baldvin Hannibalsson, who's on my extreme right here, only in physical location and in no other respect, is ex-leader of Iceland's Social Democratic Party. He was Minister of Finance and Foreign Affairs and was responsible for Iceland's EEA negotiations in the 1990s. That, for anyone who hasn't been following this in Scotland, is the halfway house, which Iceland and Norway occupy instead of full EU membership. As another point, he was also the first foreign minister to recognise the independence of the Baltic states. Nearest to me is Rune Rafaelsson, who was Secretary General of the Norwegian Barents Secretariat for 12 years, until 2015, when he was elected mayor of the Sør-Varanger municipality in northern Norway. It's the northernmost Schengen border with Russia. He's an expert on loads of things, including Bob Dylan, oil, fishing stocks, and Russian politics. We may hear of all of them. I'm going to get this so wrong, but I'm going to take a deep breath and tie. No, I just failed completely. Tuku for short, and I'm ashamed that I hadn't got that more into my head. Tuku Olsen is a young student and campaigner from the north of Greenland who won this year's Arctic Innovation Prize, and she'll be speaking about social inclusion. And beside Rune is Scots-born Rachel Lorna Johnson. She's a professor of law, Arctic oil and gas studies in universities in Iceland and Greenland. She specialises in polar law, and she wrote a stonking paper, an Arctic strategy for Scotland in 2012. I've been astonished to discover that she actually lived in Thurso. Some of you may know my own Wick connections, but you will also know there's an iron curtain between Wick and Thurso, so clearly we have never known one another at all until now. And she became an Icelandic citizen in 2011. We'll also have a response from Andy Whiteman, Green MSP, who is also on so many relevant committees within the Scottish Parliament, the Europe, the Economy, the Environment and the Communities committees, that I'm sure he's got ample opportunity to reflect on what he's hearing and put a kilt on it. So, without further ado, I'm going to get out of the road here and introduce our first speaker again. Would you give a warm Edinburgh, come on, let's get it big, welcome for Rune Rafaelsson.
First of all, is it on? Yeah?
Check the mute.
Yep, we'd need to know about these dreaded mutes, wouldn't we? Where is the mute button for...
On the top.
Try. No? There you go. No film, first yeah. What's there? First of all, thank you for the invitation. It's always a pleasure to be in Edinburgh. I left Kirkenes on Friday and I was here in the afternoon, so it's very easy. But if you go from Kirkenes to Oslo, it's longer than if you go from Oslo to Rome. So I think the flight between Kirkenes and Oslo is the longest domestic flight in Europe. So this tells you a lot about distances. I think it was wrong, but I'm sorry, but this was not the I have planned. So this is another. Yeah, but this is the town anyway. Because I have to check if it was all. Okay, yeah. I have to work with this, but it's no problem. Anyway, this is how it was, or could have been on Friday. We have lots of snow now, and we have seen lots of changing in this area, both politically and also regarding environmental things. When I became a mayor in 2015, in the fall, we had 5,500 refugees coming over from the Russian border and to Kirkenes. So it was a completely new situation for Kirkenes. But what happens now is that we have turned into a kind of winter destination for tourism. Now we have 20,000 Chinese coming to Kirkenes. And they have lots of money, different from the refugees. So this seems that in the Arctic, the geopolitics is also today having a big role in the development. And when I got the invitation, it was talking about, has the Arctic, the region in the political power, its need to develop sustainability? That's a big question. And I don't know if I have the exact answer to that. But for me as a politician, I'm very optimistic for the Arctic. I have lived there all my 63 years, and I still is fascinating by this area. And I look upon the Arctic as very robust. It's a good place to live, it's easy, and it had lots of possibilities. This is a picture that was taken last year, which tells something about the changes. Because my town was originally, historically, a mining town. It's a huge open pit area where the biggest, it was kind of company town, thousands of people working in the mines. But today, tourism is the biggest industry. That was not the case when you were visiting there 6 years ago or something like that. Yeah, more. But so things has changed a lot in this area. So now we have huge snow hotels, and it's extremely expensive to stay there for one night. But I wish you welcome. And also the fishery has been developing. So the number of fishermen in the fjords of Kirkenes are increasing. We are now the biggest exporter of living king crab. If you go to a posh restaurant in London, you have to pay $300 for the crab, and on the crab it's a tag, and you can go to the mobile and you will see the story about the area. So we are not marketing, we are storytellers now. So this has completely changed the situation. Of course, to be a mayor in Kirkenes is extremely interesting and challenging. The geopolitical center. A bit higher. So you see now that everything starts and ends in Kirkenes. And this is not a Norwegian video. This is made by the Finns. So I'm just using it to show. Because my last point is that if you look at the Arctic, we lack a kind of infrastructure regarding the Northern Sea route. And the Finns had taken the initiative to build a new railroad from Rovaniemi to Kirkenes. And next week I'm going to Helsinki to meet, because it was the Minister of Transport in Finland, Anne Berner, who takes this initiative. And we are working very hard with this now. And the Chinese, as I will show you, they have already made the railway into the into their map. So you see that the distance is much shorter, and here you can also see the number of ships, but it's increasing. But we don't know how soon this ice will, but it will be more activity in the Northern Sea route. And also now from Kirkenes, the regional shipping is growing in the Northern Sea route. From Kirkenes to Yamal, where the biggest LNG plant is now been built with the French and Gazprom and Chinese investor. And the Chinese are also very active, and this is the Chinese map that is their initiative Belts and Roads, and we have lots of Chinese coming up just to invest not only in oil and gas but also in tourism. So what I wanted to say that the reason to in a way work for this in the Arctic is that the resources are enormous, but we have a challenge regarding how to manage that the money will stay in the area. One of the big tasks in Norway is fish farming. I mean, you have also a lot of fish farming here in Scotland. I don't know the law here, but one of the critics there is that too much of the surplus, the profit goes to the owners, and very little go to the remote area. So this is a new thing, and the same is, of course, with fishery, that you have local management, and also for the indigenous people. So there are lots of challenges that we have to face, but I'm basically optimistic, and this introduction that the Chinese are very active, I look upon it very positive because it gives opportunity for new activity in the Arctic. So this is a very new situation, and I look forward to work as a politician, and I'm very optimistic on behalf of the Arctic. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'm slowly learning to do this muting thing. Our next speaker is Rachel. Are you unmuted, my dear?
Let's find out. Is that clear?
No.
Is that clear? Then I need tech.
I think it should be this way.
I did, but it didn't.
Didn't work.
You hear me? TX. Nothing? TX. I don't know.
Or can I just give you my one?
Yes, can you hear me?
Sorry, could you just tap the end of it?
Yes. I'm quite loud. You don't need it.
I could just give you one.
Could you do that just now?
Let's do it.
Rachel, you can have mine, maybe.
I'll stick this back on mute.
There we are.
No problem.
Okay.
That's right, I'm good. Okay, how's that? Is that clearer? Okay. First of all, thanks to the organisers for inviting me to be here. Despite spending many years and all my childhood in Scotland, I'm rarely invited to speak in Scotland, so I hope that this will not be the last time I have a chance to be here. So they asked me the rather open question, is the future Arctic? And specifically, is the future of oil and gas Arctic, or is the energy future Arctic? I'm not entirely sure where to begin with that. Predictable. And onshore, we have the permafrost melt, which is destabilizing onshore facilities and onshore infrastructure. So the Arctic is still very much regarded as a frontier region in terms of oil and gas development. Not a frontier in the original Wild West sense of being some lawless and empty zone, but more in the sense of presenting new challenges and being more difficult and expensive than established oil and gas deposits. And of what we've seen also the last couple of years is low oil prices and companies rapidly divesting away from Arctic exploration. The exceptions are in Russia and in Norway. Russia, because of the way the system works, where you have laws that make it only possible for state-owned operators to be the leaders in development, means that they can, in fact, afford to run at a loss. They can run at a loss to make strategic and political points about sovereignty and control. Norway is also exploring